I don't know that I've ever seen a music executive give testimony at a bond hearing. And so that was just really surprising. Mr. Liles gave some very strong testimony, and thing you got to understand, Kevin Liles is worth $60 million. Former Def Jam exec, 300 Entertainment exec, and a partner with Young Thug. So Kevin Liles gives some emotional testimony in support of Mr. Williams being released. And so let's go ahead and listen to some of that.
Your Honor, I'm a 54-year-old father of four. I'm kind of emotional because how good this guy is.
So just to start off, in terms of him telling who he is, I'm 54 years old. I'm a father of young children. Out the gate saying I'm emotional because of how good this guy is. And again, you're just going to want to continue to keep in the back of your mind the contrast between what's being alleged in the indictment and this testimony that you're hearing. And this can oftentimes be hard when talking about people charged with crimes in general. A lot of times when they're charged with something that is really serious, people who write letters of support or who would speak on their behalf at sentencing or otherwise would be a witness, a lot of times the information they have is completely different from what's being alleged, because again, in a police report, in a complaint, their loved one is being made out to look like a monster when they could have a heart of gold. They could be the most friendly person in the world, but unfortunately they have just these ugly acts alleged against them, or they're being charged with them. And so it's really interesting to see how there is two sides to every story.
Morgan State University, I built a stadium in my old school. I have a street named after me. I have all kind of honorary doctorates. I employ probably 5,000 people.
So this is a powerful man. He's received honorary degrees. He's got his own degree, label executive. He mentioned I have 5,000 employees. So this is not just any witness off the street. Kevin Liles is a powerful man, and this is powerful testimony here.
I was the president of Def Jam. I've been in this music called hip hop for 38 years. For the life of me, I don't understand why I have to testify the good that hip hop has done around the world.
This is interesting about him saying, I find it, he's disheartened about having to speak on hip hop. Interestingly enough, hip hop is not on trial here. In fact, no one's on trial. This is a bond hearing, but it sounds like Kevin Liles in what he just said is sort of bringing in just the generality in terms of hip hop having such a bad name.
I've also started a company with Jeffery called Young Stoner Life. And I remember what he said to me, we're not just starting a company, we're going to change some lives. And that's what he's done. And he's definitely changed mine. He signed to us. And I hate to say that he signed to us because it's my partner, but we have two deals. One deal is a deal for him as an artist, solo artist, and the other deal is for Young Stoner Life.
And again, we're talking about Young Stoner Life, YSL. So this is the legitimate business side of YSL versus the YSL Young Slime Life, the gang.
There's been testimony that if this trial, and I'm not saying the court will allow it, but if it doesn't take place for a year, there'd be over $1 million in expenses just for 24-hour security police officers to ensure, off-duty police officers, second jobs to ensure Mr. Williams does not flee, does not get types of weapons, does not intimidate a witness.
So we will hear a brief portion of testimony from an individual who will testify about some of the details of the conditions that they were proposing to the court. And so we hear it was going to cost $1 million to have these law enforcement officers basically at the premises. So if Mr. Williams were allowed to be released, he would have actual law enforcement officers versus private security or anything like that. So actual sworn officers there to make sure that if he's supposed to be confined in the house, that he's there. So they were really going to put a lot of money into this in order to demonstrate to the judge, hey, this would be a suitable condition in order to appease your concerns of safety of potential witnesses, of not committing further crimes, this flight risk issue. So he would be confined at home, and we're willing to put up the money in order to pay for this security and pay for these costs.
From your personal knowledge and how much money he earns, can he afford that type of undertaking?
Jeffrey can afford it, and I can afford it, so it will be paid for.
So they got the money to pay for it. It's not going to be an issue to implement these security measures that they're talking about.
You were willing to back him as well?
I wanted to back him personally and professionally.
I thought that was powerful too. Again, here we have this music executive saying, hey, I back him personally and professionally. He's testifying under oath. So he had to raise his right hand and say that he'd tell the truth. And he's sitting here telling the judge, hey, I back Mr. Williams personally and professionally. Again, this is powerful testimony.
Jeffrey is not just an artist. He's an influencer. He's a person that I think was put here to change the people around him. He's so talented. He's creative, he's innovative, and he's fearless. He's a risk taker. I'm not signing this artist. I'm raising a young man. He looks at me as a father figure. We can't limit it to just his lyrics or his music.
Again, this is fascinating as he's describing Jeffery Williams and saying that he's fearless, he's an innovator, he's an artist, he's creative. Again, we have just this stark contrast to what's being alleged in the indictment, what the charges are against him, and what would ultimately be in the police reports. And so if you haven't already, please get those likes up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
And I truly believe this whole thing that people are talking about, it's not him. The Jeffrey I know give me clothes off his back. The Jeffrey I know, I can give him my kids, he can give me his kids. That's the Jeffrey I know.
So again, they're saying, all these allegations, that's not him. That's not the Jeffrey I know. From the prosecution's perspective, they're going to basically be saying, yeah, he can be charming and charismatic and friendly and even philanthropic and all these good things. But at the same time, there's another side to him that is a criminal and is the head of a criminal organization that has committed some very serious offenses. Again, those aren't my words. That's just going to be what the position of the state is.
There's been a lot of argument by the prosecution about the lyrics and songs. Can you explain what is selling in the rap industry dealing with the lyrics, and why are they being promoted, and why are people wanting it?
Your Honor, you've I don't know how old you are, but older than you. I've been fighting this battle.
That's when you're dealing with serious offenses, allegations of murder, attempted murder, intent to distribute drugs and all these kind of things, and people are facing life in prison and the like, you're still going to have these moments of levity. They're joking about, listen, I don't know how old you are, Your Honor. Hey, I'm older than you, and everyone has a laugh. So there are oftentimes these situations in hearings or even with trials, and you have juries who will have a laugh. These light moments are always fun when those come up.
And it's funny how we're the number one music in the world now, and we want to bring this back up. We don't argue about any other movies or other genres of music that talk about I ran them over in my truck, or I got drunk and I went and shot him. We don't bring those things to court. But quote unquote, our music, we've been on trial.
So again, I find this argument interesting. I get where Kevin Liles is coming from. And again, we just had in New York the news about Jay-Z, Meek Mill, and other major artists basically fighting against rap lyrics being on trial. You hear Kevin Liles making the argument that how come no other genres of music are subject to the same scrutiny? You don't have movies that are subjected to the same scrutiny. And I get where he's coming from, but the pushback is going to be that when you're talking about crimes generally, that's one thing. When you have crimes that are ultimately tied to actual offenses that took place. So again, we went through this indictment. We saw murder. We saw attempted murder. We saw possession with intent to distribute, all these different acts in furtherance of a conspiracy. It almost, to me, seems disingenuous that we would say, oh, well, he's just in here because he raps and he raps about violent stuff. Like, no, there is a tie-in to specific offenses that have taken place. So where I'm at with this, just as a passionate fan and consumer of hip hop, as a DJ, and as someone who staunchly upholds the First Amendment and right to creative expression and the like, there is a line to be drawn between being able to rap about material that could be perceived as offensive or violent content, and having lyrics that actually line up with actual crimes that have been committed. Because most people who are actually fans of the music, they're law-abiding citizens. Just because you love hearing about somebody with guns and somebody who shot up any and everybody on a record, most people do not commit crimes, right? Most people live regular their lives and they work a 9 to 5 and they care about the security of themselves and their family and the like. You know what I mean? So we're consumers of this art. However, again, I think most people, if they were being honest, would draw that distinction between what is entertainment and when you actually have lines in music that correspond with actual crimes, including murders and assaults with a deadly weapon that actually occurred.
So we sit here on trial, we talk about lyrics. I don't understand the thing, Evan. I'm going to be here and I'm going to keep fighting for it because I believe self-expression and I believe we should protect Black art.
I'm sort of conflicted here, but I just think about 50 Cent. 50 Cent being one of the hardest, grimiest gangster rappers in the history of rap. And you look at, that first album that he recorded, Get Rich or Die Trying, and there was a lot of violence on that album, but you didn't have specific acts that were tied to any of those lyrics. In one of the tracks, I do what I want to do. I don't care if I get caught. The DA could play this motherfucking tape in court. I'll kill you. It doesn't get more gutter than that. However, when he was rapping his lyrics throughout that whole album, there was nothing that was actually tied to actual offenses taking place. So that's, again, where the disconnect is. But let's carry on.
With regards to Mr. Williams, and the court may not be familiar, where does he rank in the music industry?
Objection. That's not relevant to anything.
All right, so he's trying to paint a picture in terms of who Young Thug is and asks, hey, where does he rank? Because he knows Kevin is going to come back with an answer that just elevates him to this status of somebody who is not leader and founder of a criminal street gang. On the contrary, he's an amazing artist and creative. And so the prosecution objects and the judge ultimately sustains.
You understand that Mr. Williams was charged in 2018 in DeKalb County with a offense involving he was riding in a car with 2 other people, and there was a gun and a small amount of drugs in the car. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and that case is still pending, believe it or not.
So the reason why he's bringing this up is because the witness has to know. It can't just be all roses and rainbows on one side without knowing the allegations of cases that are actually pending. So I've seen situations where a person is testifying regarding an individual who's facing charges, and they say he's friendly, he's supportive, he's a wonderful person, he's not violent at all these wonderful things. And then the prosecutor cross-examines him and is like, are you aware what he's actually being charged with? Are you aware what his criminal history is? And the person didn't know. So it's like, okay, well, if you knew the details of these things, would you still have the same opinion? And so the defense attorney is going, I won't say out of his way, but he's taking the time to walk Mr. Liles through this testimony in terms of, yes, I'm aware there are pending charges relating to weapons possession and the like, but I nonetheless still stand on my position that I back him personally and professionally. And again, this is going to be heavy testimony here from Mr. Liles.
I don't know. Are you familiar with all that?
Yes.
The allegation also entails the fact that when Mr. Williams was arrested at the home here in Atlanta, a search warrant was then executed at that home, and there were multiple firearms. One firearm is allegedly illegal. It turned into like a machine gun. There were supposedly about 2 pounds of marijuana and some items in, looks like an energy drink, but it supposedly contains either Schedule 2, 3, or 4 drugs in it. You're familiar with that?
I read it.
Okay.
So again, law enforcement executed a search warrant, found some guns, found marijuana, found, sounds like some codeine. This is evidence of criminal activity. So again, lyrics are one thing, but execution of search warrants yielding evidence of criminal activity. This is stuff that we need to know. Are you aware of this, or have you only been given the positive side of things? Ultimately, it's to add credibility to what it is that Mr. Liles is saying, because if he has full knowledge of these allegations and yet is still willing to back him, as he says, personally and professionally, then that's going to go a pretty long ways.
Understanding all those facts, the DeKalb County case, current bond, and the search of the home, I would like to ask you, in addition to the fact that we are charging 2 counts in this current indictment, you're familiar with the RICO conspiracy and the gang
Yes.
count. Okay. On your oath, would you be willing to back with your own personal property and wealth, as well as your own company's personal property and wealth, the bond for Mr. Williams, if the Honorable Court wanted a high bond bond.
Objection, just ask and answer. The witness actually has already stated that.
Yeah, he already said he
I
put
very
forth.
clearly heard
He
that.
put up his own and his company's resources, so I'll stand the objection.
The judge ultimately sustained the objection because he's already answered that he personally and professionally backs Young Thug and is willing to stand behind him. But I thought that the objection should probably be overruled because it's not necessarily the same question, because now we have the information of pending charges, of evidence of criminal activity. So I think the posing of the question again, are you willing to back him with your own wealth, with your own finances, with your own company, despite these allegations against him? I think that's a different question, but ultimately the judge sustained the objection. I don't agree with that ruling.
You have to understand that you would, if the court wanted to, you would lose that wealth if Mr. Williams violated condition bond. I mean, it's not just going bond when Mr. Williams in custody, you're released.
I like the calculated zoom in on his face as the defense attorney is really saying what's on the line here. You're saying, hey, if you are backing him in the way that you say you are, this is serious. This isn't just you coming in and saying words that don't have meaning. No, you are actually putting your name, putting your wealth on the line in backing this individual. Are you sure you want to do that?
Court could have you signed as a co-signer on that bond, and you would actually have a lien against your wealth if Mr. Williams violated condition bond. Are you still willing to do that?
Like a son to me. Yes.
Without hesitation.
Without hesitation.
And that's powerful because now we're going to the issue of flight risk. So the thought is Jeffery Williams is a millionaire. It'd be very easy for him to jump on a private jet and bounce out to France or whatever and never come back. And I don't know exactly what amount of time he's facing in this case, but one of the court's concerned in terms of, is he going to come back to face these charges? If there were any possibility that he would be able to just leave and take off, the question to Mr. Liles is, are you willing, if he were to be able to get out of custody for requiring a significant bond amount, that you would be paying this and you could ultimately be subject to having a lien against your property, against your wealth? Are you willing to be that responsible? And he's saying, hey, I look at him like a son. I'm willing to do that. So again, this was really powerful testimony.
If granted bond on your oath, Mr. Williams would intimidate any witness.
Nah.
Obstruct the administration of justice.
No.
So they're asking, do you believe if Mr. Williams gets out of custody, is he gonna obstruct the administration of justice? Is he gonna intimidate witnesses? And he almost laughs when he says no. In his mind, at least that's what it comes off as, he really can't imagine this happening.
Be a danger to the community or property in the community.
Not at all.
This is what the judge has to base his decision on. So we're going back to those factors, whether they're a significant risk of flight. Is there going to be a risk of danger to persons or property in the community? Is there going to be a significant risk of committing any felony pending trial? And is there going to be any significant risk of intimidating any witnesses in this case? So the lawyer just basically went through these factors to establish that none of these things are a significant risk.
A risk to commit a crime while out on bond.
No, not at all. He has too much respect for me and too much respect for the company that we're building and too many people that depend on him. It's not about Jeffrey. It's why it's about the family. It's about the community. He understands. He's inspiring the world right now. There's a kid that he changes their life every day. I really believe that.
For the better?
For the better.
And that's probably true. I mean, I'd like to think that if Mr. Williams was released, that he'd probably keep his nose clean, right? Especially with the security detail, with everything that's at stake, if he is involved in any sort of criminal activity, it'd be very foolish to get out and continue on with that. You would want to be squeaky clean and make sure that you are not violating any laws, not associating with anybody who's violating laws, to make sure that you don't get taken back into custody. Because I can guarantee you this has been hell for him. He's been detained since May 9th. So we're almost coming up on a month. And so this is an individual who's a millionaire, has all the resources in the world, the jewelry, the cash, just everything, the prestige, the way he lives his life. And that's all been at least temporarily taken away from him. So this has been a very difficult situation for Mr. Williams.
If this honorable court granted bond, but it was very, very restricted. Mr. Williams is not coming out to studios. He's not doing videos. Speaking with him may be curtailed. Is your record label still willing to keep him as a vibrant member of SIN?
That's my partner.
And just for the court's edification, I think you just said, but Mr. Williams is not only an artist, he's an owner of the company, right?
He's a businessman. I told him hip hop has given him a way to be an entrepreneur, a way to empower people, a way to educate people. And he has a responsibility. He knows that with this success comes responsibility. And we made a commitment to each other that we're going to do this for the rest of our life.